The question is that the motion be agreed. I give the call to the Honourable Nick Goiran.
Deputy Acting President. Interestingly, the most recent speaker to the motion has suggested that we should be treating our elderly with dignity. I agree 100% with the member with respect to that important principle. And I note that the mover of the motion, Acting President, has had plenty to say about the federal government's performance with respect to elderly Western Australians, but very little, in fact really nothing at all to say with regard to his own state government. And if we utilise the principle that we should be treating our elderly with dignity, it is appropriate for us to consider what exactly it is that the McGowan Labor government have done with regard to our elderly Western Australians and whether they have indeed treated them with dignity. Now, the mover of the motion may be unaware of this because these events actually precede his time in the Legislative Council. But in January of this year, we marked 5 years since WA Labor promised to take action with respect to elderly Western Australians. 5 years. And the honourable member may want to familiarise himself with a document dated January 2017 entitled WA Labor Stopping Family and Domestic Violence. And it lists here a range of election promises, and very interestingly, Acting President, I attended an event with the Honourable Kate Doust on the weekend, an excellent event for Starrick, a fundraiser, and I acknowledge the long-standing commitment of the Honourable Kate Doust to that organisation and that particular event. What was interesting at that event, which was dealt with entirely on a bipartisan basis, was that the Honourable Minister was present and gave a speech, as one would expect. And very interestingly in that speech, the Minister said that all of the government's election promises had been fulfilled. Now, I nearly choked on my cup of tea at that point in time, but it was a bipartisan event for a very important service provider, and it wasn't the time for any unruly interjections in the middle of a minister's speech. But it might interest the Honourable Dan Caddy to have a look at those particular promises, because one of them in particular has relevance to elderly Western Australians. And I read at page 13 here.
Honourable Pierre Yang on a point of order.
Point of order. Acting President, I refer to Standing Order 47 and I ask for your guidance in relation to the Honourable Nick Goiran's contribution. It seems to me that his contribution, as it is a very important one, has minimal relevance to the motion that is in front of us, because we are talking about the Morrison government, we are talking about aged care, and I ask for your guidance on this point of order.
Thank you. I'll just seek some advice. Honourable members, noting the ruling of the chair previously, I will remind members of the motion that is before the House that it deals with the aged care sector in the recent budget, and I would ask that members please return their comments to the motion before the House.
Acting President.
Honourable Nick Goiran.
Thank you, Acting President. Returning to page 13 of this document by WA Labor, it reads, WA Labor wants to ensure that senior Western Australia...
Minister for Emergency Services.
I do think the Honourable Nick Goiran has been disrespectful to the person who's in the chair this afternoon. He's given a ruling based on the President's ruling, and that is that there's a motion before the House. Now, this is not a wide-ranging debate If somebody wants to make a budget speech, they can do it next week. The motion before us today is about the aged care sector and the failings of the Morrison government. That's what the ruling was, so I would ask the Honourable Nick Goiran to show some respect to the chair.
Again, we're dealing with the motion before the House, and the honourable member might return his remarks to the motion. So in particular, refer his document to the motion that's before the House before us.
Acting President.
Honourable Nick Goiran.
Acting President, the breathtaking ignorance of the members opposite with respect to the aged care sector and the issue of elder abuse, I find incredible. Now, we've just heard from a member from the...
What's that got to do with the recent federal budget? Read the motion. Read the motion, honourable member.
Acting President.
Read the motion. It's not about arrogance. You're the arrogant one.
I don't know.
You don't listen to the chair's ruling twice, three times.
Acting President.
Read the motion. Talk to the motion.
Order, members. The Honourable Nick Goiran.
Thank you, Acting
Please return
President.
your remarks to the motion before
Well,
the House.
Acting President, it would be very easy for me to return my marks to the motion if we didn't have the unruly interjections from the Deputy Leader, who for some reason today has lost his cool, and I might add, continues to demonstrate a misunderstanding with respect to the connection of the aged care sector and elder abuse. Now, Acting President, if this member wants to stand and make a contribution and explain to the House that there's no elder abuse in the aged care sector, then stand up and do it.
The federal
what
budget,
an absolute
read the motion.
disgrace by
Read
you
the motion.
that you do not
Read the
even
motion.
have the
Give your budget
fortitude
speech
to
next
even read
week.
your
Give
own
your budget
government's
speech next
policy
week.
on this.
Read the motion.
Acting
Order.
President, it's been more than 5 years since this particular member and these members opposite have failed to address elder abuse in this state. I have raised this
Order,
on
members.
numerous occasions.
Order. The motion is quite clear that this House condemns the Morrison government for its failure to provide support to the aged care sector. And again, I would ask that you return your remarks to the aged care sector.
And Acting President, the instant that one of the members opposite decides to explain to the House that there is no elder abuse in the aged care sector, the moment that they want to do that, with all due respect to you, honourable member, it is you and your team who agreed to the Select Committee into elder abuse. If you've ever read this document, you would... this is unbelievable. I think this... Are you the parliamentary secretary? Are you the parliamentary secretary for seniors? I don't know.
Continue to avoid it.
He's possibly been sacked as a result of his underperformance. In fact, that honourable member who continues to interject was responsible for a ministerial statement on the 15th of June last year, honourable member. Do you remember what you said on the 15th of June 2021?
The Morrison government and the budget?
Very interesting, Acting President. Very interesting.
Order.
But the honourable member continues to demonstrate no understanding whatsoever with regard to the aged care sector, least of all the important issue of elder abuse. I can't believe it, Acting President, that members opposite seem to have such little regard for the aged care sector that you're happy to sweep under the carpet the issue of elder abuse. You should hang your head in shame. And if that honourable member, in due course, I find out actually is the Parliamentary Secretary for Seniors, as I know he was a year ago, but who knows what his position is nowadays, then he should hang his head even deeper in shame. Well, honourable member, why don't you read the motion? Or is the font too tiny for you? Because I notice Acting
Order,
President...
members. Order. The Honourable Nick Goiran has the call.
Thank you, Acting President. I noticed that in recent times in a court of law that the Attorney-General indicated as part of his defence that the font was too tiny. Maybe that's the same case with respect to the honourable member. Now, Acting President, returning to the motion, as the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is so enthusiastic for us to do, I remind honourable members that it is more than 5 years since this government has failed to do anything with respect to elderly Western Australians. More than 5 years. Now, it might take the Honourable Kyle McGinn a little bit of time to get his abacus out and work out actually how many days that is, but he might be interested to know that it's been we're approaching shortly 2,000 days since this government has failed to address this issue. Now, Acting President, they are the ones who said that they were going to expedite these laws for the benefit of senior Western Australians. Funnily enough, senior Western Australians who have, some of them are in the aged care sector. That's a revelation, apparently, to the Honourable Kyle McGinn, who still hasn't quite understood what the aged care sector is. He is so obsessed with the Morrison government that he hasn't taken a moment to go and have a question to his own government. What would be very interesting, Acting President, is if some of the members opposite actually opened the door and had a conversation with some of their own ministers. Is there a minister for seniors in Western Australia, or are we not allowed to talk about that issue? It's so sensitive for the members opposite, they couldn't possibly allow us to hold this government to account with regard to its performance. No way. Can't be done, apparently. It's all irrelevant. The issue of elder abuse is irrelevant. Well, it wasn't to the Honourable Matthew Swinburne, because at the time he was a member of this particular select committee, along with myself, the Honourable Jorn Sibma and the Honourable Alison Zabon. Now, the Honourable Alison Zabon is no longer a member of this honourable chamber, but I'm sure she would have plenty to say about this to the Honourable Kyle McGinn and his friends with respect to the aged care sector. In fact, if they had read this report, they would note that there's even a section that deals with this particular issue. But as per usual, once again, the members opposite demonstrate that they have a failure to read. It continues to be a massive inability throughout this 41st Parliament and before. Now, one day, the members opposite will actually knock on the door of the Attorney-General and say to him, why don't you get on with it with respect to these laws that you said you were going to expedite some nearly 2,000 days ago. Problem, Acting President, is when you refer to 2,000 days ago, is it gets lost in translation.
Honourable Pierre Yang on a point of order.
Well, I again refer to section 47 of the standing orders, and I read, a member's speech must be relevant to the matter under discussion and shall not anticipate any other matters which is listed on the notice paper. Now, Acting President, you have given guidance, and there was a point of order taken by the Deputy Leader of the House, and I ask you again to guide this House on the current debate and bring the debate back to the motion before us.
One moment. Again, members, I just want to remind you of the motion before the House in dealing with the aged care sector and in respect of funding to the aged care sector. And the honourable member might want to return his remarks to that particular part of the motion. Honourable Nick Goiran.
Acting President, one of the ways in which I think, well, certainly members of the Select Committee felt that these type of issues could be addressed would be by the implementation of what is referred to as health justice partnerships. Now, health justice partnerships, Acting President, for some of the members opposite who, of course, have not read the report, as we know, would be of some assistance to those in the aged care sector. Would be. But if the Honourable Kyle McGinn would just take a moment to read that report from the last Parliament, the 40th Parliament, it was tabled in September 2018. Hopefully the font's not too tiny for him and his members. Then they will understand a little bit more about this issue of elder abuse and how the funding, Acting President, of health justice partnerships might be of some assistance. But who's going to do that? Apparently, it's all the responsibility of the Morrison government, but the McGowan government takes no responsibility whatsoever with regard to senior Western Australians. What is the point of having a Minister for Seniors in Western Australia if this particular government, including their Parliamentary Secretary or former Parliamentary Secretary, show no regard for these matters? They can't even be bothered to read the report. And when we draw it to their attention and hold them accountable to it, all we have is this plethora of pointless points of order about relevance, because they don't understand the relevance of elder abuse in the aged care sector. It's quite breathtaking that the members opposite would continue to suggest that elder abuse is an irrelevance in the aged care sector. It continues to amaze me that the members opposite fail to understand that there is supposed to be a partnership between the federal government and the state government with respect to these issues. They continue to demonstrate a breathtaking ignorance in this respect. I would encourage those members opposite, especially the Honourable Kyle McGinn, to sit down, take a briefing from the Honourable Matthew Swinburne. He was an outstanding member of this particular committee, passionate member of this committee, has had some outstanding advocacy for the issue of elder abuse, including in the aged care sector, but the honourable member shows that he's got no understanding of it. Evidently hasn't bothered to read the report, doesn't care that his own government continues to ignore the recommendations of the committee. The 24th recommendation of the committee recommended that this matter be addressed as a matter of urgency. Now, this is after Acting President, the government had promised as far back as 2017 that they would expedite these matters, expedite them. Nothing happened, nothing happened. And so this particular committee was formed, and in September 2018 we made recommendations, including that 24th recommendation, which I encourage the Honourable Kyle McGinn to read. 24th recommendation, which was to remind the government about its commitment from 2017 and ask them to address it as a matter of urgency. November 2018, nothing happened. 2019, nothing. 2020, nothing. 2021, nothing. Here we are now, 11th of May, still nothing. What is this government waiting for? Now, a year ago, or just under a year ago, the Honourable Kyle McGinn decided he would stand up here and deliver a pre-prepared speech in the form of a ministerial statement. It's quite capable of reading on that day, the 15th of June 2021. It's your document, Honourable Member, all right? So if you don't like your own document, you'll have to build a bridge and get over it. Now, on the 15th of June last year, the Honourable Member showed to the House that he was capable of reading, and he delivered this ministerial statement on behalf of the Minister for Seniors and Ageing. Now, what happened on the 15th of June last year, Acting President? It was World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, 2021. Now, we're just shy of another month before World Elder Abuse Awareness Day again. Are we going to have yet another anniversary where the government has failed to deal with the issue of elder abuse, including in the aged care sector? Is that what's going to happen again? Nearly 2,000 days. The problem, as I said, Acting President, before the Honourable Pierre Yang decided to raise another point of order, was that the problem with 2,000 days is that it's so many that it's easy to misunderstand actually how long it is. It's more than 5 years. Now, Acting President, if it was a situation where a government who has a Minister for Seniors has done nothing in this area for 5 years, at what point should the person be sacked? Who's going to take responsibility for it? As I said earlier, I went to a bipartisan event with the Honourable Kate Doust earlier, just last weekend. It was a good bipartisan event. That's how these particular types of matters should be addressed, as was indicated by the Honourable Donna Farragut. These are the types of debates and matters that would be best addressed in a bipartisan fashion. That's what disappoints me. I share the disappointment of the Honourable Donna Farragut with respect to the mover of the motion, because he has chosen, as is his right, to take what has traditionally in this House been dealt with as a bipartisan issue and suddenly made it a political one. How does the Honourable Member think that we managed to have as much success as we did with the Select Committee into Elder Abuse? It was because actually it was a tripartisan committee and we dealt with the issue on a goodwill basis. The Honourable Matthew Swinburne chose to put down his Labor colours. We chose to do the same with respect to the Liberal Party. The Honourable Alison Zamond did the same with respect to the Greens. And we dealt with the issue on a tripartisan basis. That's how you deal with these serious issues. Because isn't it the case that we're supposed to be aspiring to the principle that we should be treating our elderly with dignity, Well, one way in which we can do that is actually by reading these reports, number one. Number two is knock on the door of the minister to make sure that the recommendations get implemented. That's how we can that's how we can usefully, as legislators, law reformers, that's how we can usefully and practically assist Western Australians, particularly the elderly, including in the aged care sector, by fulfilling our duty properly. That hasn't happened under the McGowan Labor government, not just in 2022, but for more than 5 years. And so I do understand, Acting President, why the honourable members earlier were getting quite agitated with respect to this matter, because they thought that they would just have this clean run today to be able to go and whack the Morrison government with respect to the aged care sector, forgetting, as the Honourable Donna Farragut mentioned earlier, what's happening in their own garden. Nothing. The Minister for Seniors is missing in action. We've got the Minister for the Prevention of Family and Domestic Violence misleading stakeholders in the community, saying that all of the government's election promises have been fulfilled. What absolute garbage. Not true. And the prime culprit in all of this is, of course, the Attorney-General, who's now been exposed as unreliable, lacking in credibility. And here we are, more than 5 years later, still waiting for this bill to emerge. So I do hope when the honourable members opposite get an opportunity to consider this matter.
On a point of order, the Honourable Sandra Carr.
Acting President, I draw your attention to Standing Order 30. The honourable member has been asked a number of times to return to relevance. 31C, persistent and willfully refuses to conform to a standing order. He's been asked a number of times. He's continuing to refer to the same points consistently, and I ask for your direction to return some consistency.
Order, members.
Ironic
Order.
to be interrupting to talk about interrupting.
I will consider that. One moment. That is not a point of order. The honourable member has attempted to remain to the topic of the aged care sector and providing support to the aged care sector. So, yeah, it's not a point of order. And I give the call back to the Honourable Nick Goiran.
Acting President, I agree with WA Labor when they say that they want to ensure that senior Western Australians have the ability to make a positive contribution to the community without being at risk of becoming victims of abuse. I'd simply make the point that that should also apply to the aged care sector. And I'd call on the members opposite to knock on the door of the Attorney-General and ask him to fulfil his commitment, which more than 5 years ago was to expedite these reforms.